Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode, recap or review of The Last Man on Earth. This is episode 11 of season 2 called Pitch Black. Here we go. So first things first, they start with a previously and a recap, and then we find out the fate of Mike. Sadly, we already figured out what happened to the other Phil. Other Phil actually died, sadly, so we're gonna see that continuation in the next episode. But for right now, we're gonna deal with freaking Mike. So anyways, Mike made it, and there's a big fat cruise ship, and he actually landed on the cruise ship. It's just a big fat thud, and he actually caused it to sink. He caused it to split in half and sink. Wow. So yeah, he's truly lost. But the good news is that he has a water trike. Yeah, he has a water trike, and he's been biking day and night. I'm glad that I counted right, because apparently he did 3 days and nights going to find civilization. And well, first he had an illusion of his little brother, Phil. And we get Phil as a kid, and apparently Phil as a kid actually filled a pool up with Kool-Aid. I don't know if the parents actually allowed him to do that, but I bet it might have been his dream or something. So, anyways, yeah, that was actually a dream. And, well, the good news is Mike found a sailboat. And for right now, we have no idea if anyone's in there at this point. He found water. He found crackers. That's good. He got something to eat. He found a bunch of maps. And he found clean underwear because, well, that crash, my gosh. Would you have fudged your Huggies too? I think you might have. So he got a big change of clothes, and well, he's as silly / crazy as his brother. I mean, yeah, he did a fashion show with his worm friend. But anyways, so it turns out the boat does have a captain. The question is, why the hell didn't he answer when he's like, hello, anyone here? Of course, well, we find out later he's actually a creepy dude, but whatever. So the captain has a spear gat, and Mike decided to tell him the story. He had to tell him the story of everything that happened. You know his story. He was in space, and then he landed down, and all that. And he also apologizes for drinking the water, taking his clothes, and the crackers. So it turns out the captain's name is Pat Brown, and he says he is the last man on Earth. Oh my gosh, man, seriously. Why couldn't Carol find him? Why couldn't Carol find him? Oh my gosh. I'm kidding. Anyway, so Pat actually decided to buy a boat and stay far away from the land as he could. But he does do runs to get food, but that's it. He goes there and he comes back. And he named his boat These Nuts, or Das Nuts. So apparently to Pat, what Pat thinks is that no one's immune to the virus, so no one's out there. And Pat went only to the big cities, apparently. Yeah, he said he went to all the ones that mattered, and apparently he couldn't find anything. And of course, I'll put side note, even though I would talk about it later, is that he should have saw the billboards of Phil. Phil put billboards everywhere of said alive in Tucson, but he didn't see them. We'll get into that later of why he didn't see him. Anyways, Mike talks about black holes to him, and the fact that black holes, what is the deal with them, why they're named that, and they made a tasteless joke about they actually like to be called African American holes. Yeah, that's a tasteless joke. Anyways, we know Mike is from Tucson. He has parents, he has a brother, Phil, and Pat apparently had a family. And I thought it was going to be a sad one because he decided to get some scotch. I thought he was going to tell us the story. But instead, he just got scotch for the sake of scotch. But anyways, Mike wanted to search. He wanted to go on a search and see if there's someone alive in there, or at least see for himself. And Pat says no, due to his searching already, and there was no successful findings. And apparently Pat might be creepy because it seems like he had photos of another guy on the boat with him. So, and we don't see where the other guy is. But of course, given the thing that I kind of came to the assumption of, or at least a good idea, is that He doesn't have a printer, chances are. He doesn't have a camera, because if he did have a camera, he would have took a picture of Mike and them together. So that was before. Anyways, we see he has pictures of himself, pictures of his life. We see pictures that he actually did tennis matches and he looked different, younger, and less grizzly than that, and etc. etc. And then Pat is by freaking Mike's bedside when he wakes up. Yeah, you gotta admit that's kind of weird. So apparently Pat actually decided to change his mind, and they're gonna do it his way though. If they're gonna go check out the cities and see if someone's there, you're gonna do it his way, and his way is basically doing it in hazmat suits. But anyways, yeah. So commercial break over. Mike is loving the land, but sadly, bastards, dumb male bastards, he was rubbing up a condom. Yeah, he was filling up the sand and there was a condom in the freaking beach. What the frick? Yeah, always bastards ruining the perfect moment. Anyways, they made it to a big city. It actually is Miami, and Pat apparently owns an ice cream truck, or at least he did previously, and was selling some stuff, I guess. And apparently Pat is an adult joker or jokester. He likes adult jokes, and he kept on making sex jokes and innuendo jokes, which whatever. Well, anyways, no one's around. Mike is missing the population, all the sounds of hearing people talk and everything, the experience of being in a well-populated area. So we finally get, and there was someone who actually talked about where's the bodies, and I'm going to make sure I actually point them to this video so I can tell them what happened to the bodies. But apparently the bodies, which is weird that some of the houses are empty still, but of course I guess not all of the houses would have them still in the freaking place. But anyways, we find out where the bodies go. The bodies are actually in an emergency safe haven. So we got emergency safe havens all over the place, and that's where they all went to get diagnosed or something, and they sadly died there. So you have lots of body bags. So they didn't actually disintegrate like I figured. But yeah, at least we get to have evidence of where the frick they are. So there we go. The writers were listening. Yay. And apparently they died by bleeding out. Yeah, they bled out. And of course, sadly, freaking Pat had to say, oh, they bled out everywhere, including the butthole. Like, what the frick? And the pee hole. Was like, okay, I get it. And apparently Pat likes it. See a bikini on a skeleton, or at least a person with a bikini on, even though it's a skeleton, it still turns them on. I'm like, ugh. Anyways, Pat tries to convince Mike to go. Yeah. Oh, wait, no. Pat tries to convince Mike that no one's alive. So, but at least Pat gets to do one thing he wanted to do. He wanted to play tennis. So we figured that because there's also trophies in the room that Mike slept in, and some of the photos show some tennis matches and stuff. So Mike lost the tennis match, and he owes him a Lamborghini. He owns him a car. So Pat has to do a detour apparently because he kind of forgot of the billboard. Yeah, so it turns out he saw the billboards that said "Alive in Tucson," but yeah, it gets crazier what happens. Anyways, Mike finally sees the billboard that Phil left, and then all of a sudden, and it was like, why did Pat? And then all of a sudden, Pat just knocks freaking Mike out with a wrench. So at first, I thought Mike was left for dead, and end of commercial. Anyways, Mike is left for dead there, but apparently it's another dream, and I guess Phil was a nasty kid back then. He's nasty now, and it doesn't help his character because now it's like, oh, he's always been nasty. It's just that you didn't see it in the first season until when it really came out. And like, Phil was a decent man. You guys fricked him up. That's all you did. And now you're freaking, excuse me. What you guys technically doing is a Star Wars move. That's what you're doing. Intentionally. You're doing it intentionally, a Star Wars move. But anyways, so Pat poured bleach on him so he can cleanse them from the germs in quotations. And here's why Pat does not look at the billboards. Pat thinks that the government is in Tucson. He thinks that government officials have a bunker in Tucson and it's all a trap. for some and I don't even get what the trap would be, because it's like, if people go to Tucson and the government's there, what, they're gonna shoot them down and you say exclusive only? I don't think so. But anyways, yeah, he thinks the government is involved. And Pat will shoot Mike because he wants to leave and check out Tucson. And Pat then put his gun down because he was going to do his last things before he was going to kill Mike. And Mike tried to grab the gun, but Pat kicked the gun away. And then it turns out Mike actually has a rip in his suit. Of course, Pat cries because it's like, oh, it's game over. He's infected. And Mike has been knocked out. So Pat put Mike in a body bag, and Pat wrote that cause of death was because of the government. So luckily Mike is free, and yeah, they're in Miami. He took a rescue vehicle to drive. So Mike is free now, and he is going to Tucson. And as for Wormphil, he didn't have Wormphil with him, so at least the good news is that Pat has a Wormphil. So this episode does not whatsoever has our crew that had that horrible death at their hands. But we needed to know what happened to Mike. And I'm glad after all these episodes we finally get one where Mike is the center of attention. As for Pat, my goodness. The good news is that now we have someone that's worse than Phil. Because Phil was seen like the horrible bad guy. But at least the good news, and other Phil actually seemed like a bad guy as well. Actually, almost everybody in that group is kind of seemed like a bad guy. But of course, Phil is like the worst of them all. Now we have Pat, who's the worst of them all. And I would love to see the point of where Pat decides to actually check stuff out. And then as soon as he finds they're all in Malibu, oh my gosh, that's going to be so funny. Where Pat goes freaking damn crazy and they have no choice but to incarcerate Pat. But we won't know. I think chances are Pat is just a one hit off. He's just going to still be in the freaking water. He might return, but not sure. Anyways, there you go. That is a recap / a rundown / review of this episode. This episode was decent. I'm just shocked at Pat. My gosh. Dang, Pat. Anyways, stay tuned for the next one. Coming next week, we're going to deal with what happens to the aftermath of the other Phil's death. Stay tuned.